An hour before people were supposed to show up for my birthday, I was walking around the house in that weird limbo where everything's ready but time just won't move. The decorations were simple, nothing crazy. Just some balloons, a banner Madison had picked out, and the smell of whatever she was baking still lingering faintly in the kitchen. It was supposed to be a good night. Friends, food, laughter, a celebration, my celebration, but my chest already felt off. She was in the bedroom getting ready, probably for the 4th time, and I was alone in the living room pretending to be busy, straightening magazines that no one would read, adjusting chairs that didn't need adjusting. I wasn't nervous exactly, just restless. Something about the day felt jittery, like the build-up to a conversation you don't want to have but know is coming. That's when I noticed her phone buzzing on the coffee table. Now listen, I'm not the kind of guy who snoops. Never have been. I've always believed that if you go digging into someone's phone, you're looking to confirm something you already suspect. That's a one-way ticket to hell in a handbasket for both of you. And besides, Madison and I had always had this unspoken rule. Trust is the glue. But this time, I didn't go looking. Her phone just lit up. One buzz, then another. It caught my attention, and without thinking, truly without thinking, I glanced at the screen. I'll be waiting for you after his party. That was it. A single message. One sentence. And my entire body went still. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I just stared at those words until the screen faded again. At first, my brain wouldn't connect the dots. Tried to make it something else. Some innocent misunderstanding. His party. Who? Me? It had to be. There was no one else in our lives with a birthday today. My hands felt numb. I didn't recognize the name. Just a first name and some emojis. Could have been a coworker. Could have been some app contact. Could have been anyone. But the message didn't leave room for creative interpretations. It wasn't, "Are you still coming?" Or "Can't wait to hang later." It was waiting. After my party. And the worst part? I wasn't even angry. I was blank. I felt like someone had scooped out the inside of my chest and replaced it with static. That's when she walked into the room. Hair curled, heels in hand, a tiny sparkle at the corner of her eyes from the glitter she liked to wear on big nights. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. But all I could think was, who are you getting dressed for? She stopped mid-step, saw my face, and didn't even ask what was wrong. Instead, she walked right over to the coffee table, picked up her phone like it was nothing, locked the screen, and smiled at me. Too quickly, too controlled. "Oh," she said with a practiced lightness. "That was just Gina. She's trying to get me to go out later. Some rooftop thing. Don't worry. I told her it's your night." I didn't say anything. She kept smiling. Too wide. The kind of smile people wear when they're hoping you believe them so they don't have to lie further. "You okay?" she asked, like I was the one acting strange. "You're being quiet." I shrugged. "Yeah, just tired, I guess." She nodded quickly, too quickly, and stepped away to grab something from the kitchen. She was already switching gears, talking about which friends might show up early, which wine to open first, whether the Spotify playlist I made would be vibe-appropriate. But something in me had already changed. That message was still burned into my brain like a fresh brand. She didn't bring it up again. Didn't say who the message was really from. Didn't hand me the phone and say, "Here, look, it's nothing." She just carried on like I was the one bringing in a storm cloud on a sunny day. And I let her. I played along. But every word she said after that hit differently. I started analyzing her tone, her posture, her breathing. I noticed how quickly she tucked the phone away in her purse, like it had become radioactive. How she started complimenting me out of nowhere. How handsome I looked in my shirt. How she couldn't wait to see everyone's reactions when they saw the cake. It was too much, too fast, like she was trying to patch up a sinking ship before I could spot the leak. But I had already seen it. I might not have known the depth of the hole, but I knew something wasn't holding water anymore. It wasn't just the message. It was everything around it. Over the past few months, there'd been signs. Little things I brushed off. Her becoming more secretive with her phone. Notifications she'd swipe away before I could even glance. Those nights she'd come home exhausted from work but never say much about what she did. Times she'd turn away from me in bed, claiming she was just mentally drained. I told myself it was stress, that we were just in a rut, that maybe I was being distant. But deep down I knew better. Sometimes your gut doesn't need receipts. It just knows. But I'd kept quiet, because I didn't want to be that guy. The jealous one, the paranoid one. So I stuffed it down. Until now. Until a random message ripped the blindfold off in 1 second flat. And the way she stood there, acting like I should smile and thank her for a night she was already planning to leave early from. That's what did it. That's what made my stomach twist in a way that didn't untangle. I don't remember much of what I said after that. Just small talk. Laughter that didn't feel like mine. Nodding at her stories, pretending like my mind wasn't spinning in 5 directions. She probably thought she'd dodged a bullet. But the truth is, something in me had already cracked. And once that first crack shows up, even if it's tiny, it only takes time for the whole thing to split wide open. There wasn't going to be a confrontation tonight. Not yet. But I knew I wouldn't be blowing out birthday candles the same way again. We were driving to the restaurant, just the 2 of us in the car, and I swear the silence was louder than the engine. Madison had the GPS on her phone pulled up, even though she knew exactly where the place was. Maybe it gave her something to focus on, or maybe it was an excuse not to talk. I had my hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Stuck on that message, echoing like a loose screw rattling around inside my head. I'll be waiting for you after his party. I didn't bring it up again. She didn't either. We just played the part, the loving couple, the birthday duo. But everything in me was tightening, coiling into a knot I couldn't untangle. Because now that the idea was there, that she might be seeing someone else, I couldn't stop looking back. Rewinding the last few months like a movie I hadn't paid enough attention to the first time. And suddenly, every scene made more sense than I wanted it to. Like how she started taking her phone everywhere. Not just to the bathroom, to the laundry room, the garage, even to get the mail. At first, I thought it was just habit. Everyone's glued to their phones these days. But then it got weird. She'd take calls in the other room. I'd walk in and she'd instantly go quiet or end the conversation. Once, I swear I saw her turn the screen face down when I came into the kitchen, like she didn't want me to see who was texting. And then there were the extra shifts at work. Madison works in HR at a mid-sized company. Nothing glamorous, nothing high pressure. But suddenly she was staying late 2-3 nights a week. She'd come home smelling like a mix of hotel lobby perfume and fancy hand soap, claiming the office was understaffed or that compliance season was ramping up. But here's the thing, none of that ever showed up in her paycheck. I remember checking her pay stub once, not even on purpose. It came in the mail, and she'd left it on the counter unopened. I was paying bills, noticed the envelope, and figured it was one of those generic HR memos. But it wasn't. It was her pay summary, and it didn't add up. All those late nights, all those extra hours, and nothing changed. That's when I started noticing the new dresses, the perfumes, little things she brought home without explanation. Nothing flashy, just subtle upgrades. A pair of earrings she swore were on sale. A coat that looked like something off a runway, but she said she got a good deal on it. But I never saw the receipts. And when I offered to help with our finances, maybe trim some expenses, shift things around, she brushed me off. No need, she said every time. I've got it under control. Those words felt harmless back then. Now they felt like a warning. Even the way she touched me changed. I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally. The little things disappeared. No more goodnight kisses. No more running her hand through my hair when I was cooking dinner or resting her head on my shoulder during movies. She used to text me midday, nothing big, just quick check-ins. Hope your meeting went well. Don't forget the dry cleaning. Miss you. But those faded into silence. Or worse, formality. I'd text her something simple like, "Want anything from the store?" And she'd reply hours later with, "No, I'm good. Paychecks. Like I was her Uber driver. And then came the defensiveness. I started noticing how sharp she'd get at the smallest questions. If I asked who she was texting, she'd say, "Why do you care?" If I asked about dinner plans, she'd snap, "Can't I just be tired without it being a whole thing?" It was like I couldn't ask anything without it becoming a problem. Like me wanting to connect was somehow an attack. I began feeling like a stranger in my own home. The distance wasn't loud or dramatic. It was slow and quiet, like watching a sandcastle dissolve under the tide, grain by grain. She was still there, but not with me. And I kept convincing myself that it was just a phase, that we were both busy, that every couple goes through weird patches. But now, sitting behind the wheel with her next to me, staring out the window like she was already somewhere else, I realized something brutal. I hadn't been in denial. I had been complicit in my own deception. I wanted so badly for our life to make sense that I ignored all the signs screaming in my face. I told myself she was just stressed, that she needed space, that the silence in our house didn't mean betrayal, just burnout. But the truth was, I didn't want to believe she was capable of this. I didn't want to believe that the woman I fell in love with, the one who used to curl up in bed with me on cold mornings and talk about baby names, was planning a night out with someone else right after blowing out candles at my birthday party. And yet, here we were. She suddenly spoke, snapping me out of my spiral. "Do you think they'll like the place?" she asked, glancing at me for the first time since we got in the car. "Yeah," I said. "It's a good spot." She smiled, soft and careful. "You deserve a good night." I looked at her hands. Her phone was in her lap now, screen dark, but I could see the outline of the message notification still burned into my brain. "I'll be waiting for you after his party." I nodded. "Yeah, I hope so." She changed the subject again. Asked about the playlist I'd made, whether I thought the cake would hold up in the heat, if I remembered to bring the card for the restaurant. She kept talking, and I kept driving. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat in my ears, pounding like it wanted to warn me of what was coming. In that moment, I wasn't even sure what I wanted. To catch her in the act? To confront her? To forgive her if she came clean? Or to have it all be a mistake? A terrible, painful misunderstanding? But I knew one thing for certain. Something had shifted. And whatever this night was supposed to be, it would no longer be just a birthday party. The moment we stepped out of the car, something in the air changed. It wasn't the weather. The sky was clear, the evening warm with just the right kind of breeze that carries music and laughter across parking lots. It wasn't the lights of the restaurant glowing against the glass, or the buzz of conversation from the patio where guests had already begged *N to gather. It was the way she exhaled. Madison let out a small breath, quick and low, like someone preparing themselves. Not for a celebration, but for a performance. I held the door open for her, and she gave me a quick smile. Too quick. Too light. That same brittle politeness she'd started using more and more. Like I was someone she used to know, and now she was being careful not to reveal how far apart we'd grown. Inside, the restaurant was buzzing. Friends from work, college buddies, a couple of neighbors we occasionally had wine with on the porch. Everyone was here for me, laughing, clinking glasses, calling out my name. I should have felt loved. Instead, I felt like a stranger watching his own birthday from a distance. "Hey, there he is!" someone shouted from across the room, and within seconds, I was swarmed. Backslaps, hugs, toasts already half-formed in people's mouths. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I lost sight of Madison. She'd been right behind me, but in the chaos of noise and well-wishes, she vanished like smoke. I looked toward the entrance, and that's when I saw her again. But she wasn't alone. A man walked in beside her. Well-dressed, designer-level dressed. The kind of suit you don't wear to a casual night out, the kind that says, "I planned this." Tall too. Confident. The way his hand rested gently on the small of her back made my stomach twist. They weren't talking. They didn't have to. They were together. And every single person in the room saw it at the same time I did. The laughter quieted. The waiters paused, holding trays midair. Even the birthday banner hanging over the bar seemed to sway with a kind of shame, like it no longer wanted to be associated with what was happening. He helped her out of her coat, her favorite beige trench, the one I got her last Christmas. And as she turned to thank him, she touched his wrist. Softly, like it was normal, like it was hers to touch. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. Because in that moment I knew. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It wasn't some vague message or a string of late nights or whispered calls. This was it. Confirmation in human form. Her eyes scanned the room as she adjusted her dress, and for a second, just a fraction of a second, they landed on mine. And she froze. Not a full body freeze. Just her eyes. That flicker. That wide-eyed "oh God, he's here" kind of look. The kind that says she didn't expect the lie to catch up with her this fast. I watched her recover. She smiled, tilted her head toward the man beside her, as if introducing him to the room was just the next part of the plan. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear what she said, because everything was ringing. My ears, my chest, my hands. A friend stepped toward me, concern written all over his face, but I waved him off. I didn't want sympathy. Not yet. The man, her plus one, didn't look at me right away. He was too busy scanning the crowd, probably making judgments about who mattered and who didn't. When his eyes finally met mine, he did something that will stay with me forever. He smiled. A small, smug, polite little nod. The kind of nod you give when you know you've won something. And in that moment, I realized something deeper than anger. I realized that this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a night that spiraled out of control. This was something that had been building behind my back for longer than I wanted to admit. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away from him. She didn't step toward me to explain. She just stood there, hand in hand with someone else, on the night she was supposed to be celebrating me. I looked at her again, really looked, and I saw everything I'd missed for months. The detachment, the rehearsed affection, the way she was always tired, always busy, always somewhere else. I saw the woman who used to fall asleep on my chest now standing with another man, wearing the perfume she only wore when she wanted to feel desired. And I realized I'd already lost her a long time ago. This tonight was just the curtain lifting on the truth. She tried to make her way toward me, but someone stopped her. A mutual friend, whispering urgently in her ear, probably asking what the hell was going on. Her responses were soft, but I didn't need to hear them. I knew what she'd say. It's not what it looks like. Or maybe, Connor's just a friend. Connor. Of course he had a name like Connor. The kind of name you pair with cufflinks and gym memberships and meaningless apologies. I stood there, still frozen in place, and for a moment I considered what I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to yell? Make a scene? Throw my drink? But then I realized something even more powerful than anger. I didn't have to do anything, because the scene was already made. She had walked in here on my birthday with another man on her arm. And whatever story she was going to tell, whatever excuses she'd rehearsed, didn't matter anymore, because now everyone saw it. There was no covering it up, no spinning it, no walking it back, and in a strange, cruel way, that gave me peace. I picked up my glass of champagne, untouched until that point, and took a slow, deliberate sip. Not because I needed a drink, but because I wanted to feel like I was in control of something. And in that tiny moment I was the birthday boy, the husband, the fool who walked in with hope and watched it dissolve in real time. A waiter approached me, hesitating. "Should we bring out the cake now, sir?" I looked toward the kitchen, where I could see the faint outline of a tall chocolate cake with candles already glowing. I nodded. "Yeah," I said, voice calm. "Bring it out." Because if this was going to be the night my marriage died in public, I was damn well going to eat cake at its funeral. The cake came out glowing like a beacon. I could see my name piped in chocolate across the top, candles flickering like they were trying to warn me of something. The whole restaurant went quiet as the servers sang their hesitant, "Happy Birthday," voices wobbling like they weren't sure if they should even sing. People clapped weakly. Some looked away. It wasn't the celebration anyone had imagined. Madison was standing off to the side now, Connor hovering just behind her. They weren't holding hands anymore, but they didn't need to. The damage was already done. I could feel dozens of eyes darting between them and me, waiting to see if I would explode. waiting to see if the party would turn into a scene they could whisper about for years. I didn't explode. I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile, the kind that isn't about happiness but about decision. Because in that moment, I decided I wasn't going to be the victim she'd painted me into. If she wanted to turn my birthday into her debut with Connor, fine. But I wasn't going to stand there and play the abandoned husband in front of my friends. I pulled my phone from my pocket, feeling its weight like a small secret. There was one name in my contacts I hadn't touched in over a year. Kate. We'd known each other long before Madison. There had been a spark back then. An easy connection, a warmth that felt like home, but I'd chosen loyalty over curiosity. Chosen to be the faithful husband. Now, standing in the ruins of that choice, my thumb hovered over her name. I typed a single line. "Are you free tonight?" I didn't even explain. I didn't have to. She replied instantly, "Where are you?" When I sent her the address, she answered with one word, "On my way." I slid the phone back into my pocket and turned toward the cake. People were still watching, unsure what to do. Someone tried to start a toast but faltered when they saw my face. The waiters looked like they wanted to disappear into the kitchen. I made myself clap once, sharply. "Thank you, everyone," I said, my voice calm but loud enough to cut through the awkwardness. "Let's enjoy the cake." The knife was placed in my hand. I cut the first slice slowly, my fingers steady even though my pulse was a drumbeat in my throat. Madison took a step toward me, her mouth opening like she might try to explain, but Connor touched her elbow and she stayed put. For the first time that night, I saw doubt flicker across his polished expression. He'd expected a meltdown. Instead, he got a show. I handed the first piece of cake to one of my coworkers, the second to a friend, then served myself. "Eat," I told them, smiling just enough to make it seem normal. "We're celebrating, right?" A few people laughed nervously. Plates filled. Glasses were raised. The buzz of conversation began to return, tentative at first, then louder as people tried to pretend they weren't witnessing a slow-motion car crash. Half an hour later, the door opened. Kate walked in. Black dress. Simple, elegant, confident. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention but naturally draws it anyway. She scanned the room until her eyes found mine, and then she smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She walked toward me with unhurried steps, like she belonged there. I stepped away from the cake table to meet her. "Kate," I said softly, "just for me. Thanks for coming." "Of course," she replied, her voice warm but steady. "Happy birthday." The room went silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Not awkward, anticipatory. People could feel the shift happening even if they didn't understand it yet. All eyes moved from Madison and Connor to me and Kate. I felt the power return to my chest like air filling a deflated balloon. Kate placed a hand lightly on my arm. Not possessive, not performative, just there. "Want me to stay?" she asked under her breath. I nodded once. "Yeah, stay." We moved together through the crowd, greeting people, thanking them for coming. For the first time that night, I wasn't the one being stared at with pity. I was the one people were trying to figure out. Madison watched from across the room, her expression twisting into something I couldn't quite name. A mixture of confusion, jealousy, and fear. Connor shifted uncomfortably beside her. He tried to look casual, but the confidence he'd walked in with was gone. He was no longer the man helping her off with her coat. Now he was just a guy at someone else's party, realizing the narrative wasn't going the way he expected. I could feel Madison's eyes on me as Kate and I chatted with a small group of friends. Kate laughed at something one of them said, her hand brushing mine as she reached for her drink. It wasn't an act. She wasn't a prop. She was just herself. And being near her reminded me what it felt like to be seen without suspicion, without performance. Madison finally started moving toward us, Connor trailing behind. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. I turned slightly, giving her the smallest nod of acknowledgement but nothing more. She stopped mid-step, like she'd hit an invisible wall. The guests were picking up on it now, the tension, the reversal. Whispers began to ripple across the room. People glanced at Madison, then at me and Kate, then back at Madison again. It was clear the story they'd walked in expecting, loyal husband blindsided by wife's public betrayal, was unraveling into something else entirely. For once, I didn't feel like the background character in my own life. I felt in control. Kate leaned closer. "You okay?" she whispered. "I think so," I murmured. "Actually, yeah. For the first time tonight, I am." Madison stood frozen a few feet away, her face pale, her eyes darting between me and Kate. Connor shifted again, his jaw tightening like he wanted to say something but thought better of it. In that instant, the power dynamic in the room flipped completely. They weren't the ones unveiling a secret anymore. They were the ones exposed. I took a slow sip of my drink and looked around at the faces of my friends. Some shocked, some amused, some quietly cheering me on. The message was clear without me saying a word. I wasn't going to let Madison's choices define me. Not here. Not tonight. And as Kate squeezed my arm gently, grounding me in the middle of the storm, I realized something simple but freeing. I didn't have to compete with Madison. I didn't have to win her back. I didn't even have to hate her. All I had to do was stop standing in the shadow of her lies. So I straightened my shoulders, turned back to the crowd, and smiled. "Thanks for coming, everyone," I said, my voice steady. "Let's make it a night to remember." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The party didn't fall apart, but it definitely changed shape. Conversations slowly picked back up. Glasses clinked again. People laughed, cautiously at first, then more freely, as if permission had been granted to enjoy the night. They glanced at Madison less, at me more. Whatever story had beg asterisk end the evening, the quiet drama of a betrayed husband, had now rewritten itself into something far more unpredictable. I kept my distance from her. Not out of spite, but because I didn't want to hear it, not yet. Not the stammering apologies. Not the justifications. Not the "it didn't mean anything" lines. I'd heard those before, even if only in movies. I knew what they sounded like, and I knew how hollow they'd ring. Kate stayed by my side for most of the evening, never overstepping, never performing. She wasn't there to prove anything. She was just there, steady, uncomplicated, real. Madison, on the other hand, looked like a mirror slowly cracking under pressure. Her movements grew tighter, her smile more forced. She wasn't laughing with guests anymore. She was watching them, watching me, watching how the room had turned. Her shoulders stayed high, jaw clenched, every glance flicking toward me like she couldn't stand that she was no longer the center of the room. Connor had backed off. He lingered in the corner near the bar, nursing a drink and occasionally checking his phone like he was hoping to disappear into it. The confident arrival, the smug posture, all of it was gone. Now he just looked like some guy who'd shown up to the wrong party with the wrong woman. Eventually, I knew she'd try. Madison wasn't the kind of person to sit in silence. Not when she felt cornered. And right on cue, about an hour in, she crossed the room. Kate saw her coming and touched my arm lightly. "Want me to go?" I shook my head. "No, you stay." Madison stopped a foot from us. "Can I talk to you?" Her voice was too light, too rehearsed. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence do some of the talking. Then I turned to Kate. "Would you excuse me for a sec?" Kate gave me a gentle nod and stepped aside without hesitation, slipping back into the crowd like she belonged there. Madison took a breath, lowering her voice. "Can we go somewhere private?" I tilted my head. "Private like the way you and Connor came in?" Her jaw tightened. "Please don't do that. Not here." "I'm not doing anything, Madison. You're the one who brought him." Her eyes flared with frustration. "I didn't think it would be like this." "No," I said flatly. "You thought I'd roll over and take it. Smile for the pictures. Pretend we were still good while you slipped away with him after dessert. That was the plan, right?" She didn't answer. I stared at her, really stared. The woman in front of me looked like Madison, sounded like Madison, but didn't feel like her anymore. She felt like someone trying to act her way through a role she no longer fit. "How long?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" I repeated it, softer this time. "How long has it been going on?" Her eyes darted, as if looking for a safe answer. "It wasn't serious." "That's not what I asked." She hesitated. "A few months." That hollow, weightless phrase, "a few months," dropped into my stomach like a stone. She went on. "I know it looks bad, but you have to understand. Things between us haven't been okay for a while." There it was. The shift. The redirection. "Madison," I said, keeping my voice level, "don't make this about us. You didn't cheat because we were struggling. You cheated because you wanted to, because you could." She opened her mouth like she might argue, but there was nothing left to say. I leaned in slightly. "Let me ask you something. Did you ever think, even once, about how this would feel? Walking into a room full of my people on my birthday with him?" She swallowed hard. "I didn't plan it like that." "No," I said. "But you didn't stop it either." Silence stretched between us like a rope pulled taut. She said finally, "I felt invisible, okay? For months. You've been distracted, working late, always tired. I felt like I was living with a ghost." I nodded slowly. "Funny. That's exactly how I felt. Watching you drift away one excuse at a time. You shut me out, Madison. Not the other way around." She stepped back, biting her lip. "I made a mistake." "That's not what this is," I said. "A mistake is a bad text. A drunken kiss. This was a choice. You planned this. You hid it. You walked into my birthday party holding hands with your backup plan." Her eyes watered, but I didn't feel pity. I felt tired. Tired of trying to decode her shifting emotions. Tired of wondering if her smile was real. Tired of pretending I didn't know what I'd known for months. "You don't get to cry here," I said gently. "Not tonight." She wiped at her eyes, and for a second, I saw something else flicker across her face. Not sadness. Not remorse. Fear. Fear of losing control of the story. "I can fix this," she whispered. "We can fix this." I laughed once. Not out of cruelty, but disbelief. "You brought him to my birthday. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it did," I said, my voice rising. "Because you chose to show it to me, in front of everyone. You didn't just break trust, you lit it on fire and passed out cake." She looked around, realizing people were watching us again. And then, almost like a reflex, she said the words I knew were coming. "Connor isn't even important." I swear it was just, I felt ignored. I didn't know how else to feel alive. I shook my head. "If you needed attention, you could have talked to me, screamed at me, left me, but instead you lied to me, over and over." She took a shaky breath. "I love you." "No," I said quietly. "You love the idea of me, the man who holds your history so you can feel clean." Her tears started to fall in full now, mascara smudging at the corners. "I didn't expect this to blow up like it did," she whispered. "I thought maybe we could still." "Still what?" I interrupted. "Still go home together? Pretend tonight didn't happen?" She looked away. I turned and started to walk past her, back toward the party. I felt her hand graze my sleeve, but I didn't stop. "Please," she said behind me. "Don't leave me like this." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You left me months ago, Madison. You just made it official tonight." And then I walked away. I took the mic when the room quieted, everyone expecting a typical birthday toast. But instead, I thanked them for showing up not just for my birthday, but for my awakening. I said tonight revealed who stood by me and who only stood near me, that some masks fall at the right time. Madison stood frozen. Connor was already gone. When I stepped down, the room was still, but I finally felt clear. She came home late, makeup smeared, barefoot, broken, said she made a mistake, begged me to talk. I didn't yell, didn't slam the door, just told her the door was unlocked so she could leave freely, not return. Her cries filled the space where love used to live. I felt nothing, no rage, No need. Just peace. When she walked out, it wasn't an ending. It was the first clean breath I'd taken in years.